Daily reflection creates awareness and intentional growth. At first glance, it might seem like a simple idea, pausing at the end of the day to think about what happened, but within this habit lies a powerful mechanism for transformation. Most people drift through their days with little thought of how each decision, each conversation, each action contributes to the broader story of their life. They wake up, go through the motions, complete tasks, react to circumstances, and then do it all over again the next day. But when you pause, truly pause to reflect, you interrupt the cycle of unconscious behavior, you create space for clarity, you create space for change. Awareness is the first step to growth. You cannot change what you're unaware of. That's the challenge so many people face. They try to improve their lives, but they're unclear on what's holding them back. They repeat old habits not because they're stubborn, but because they haven't taken the time to identify them. They keep bumping into the same emotional walls, stumbling into the same patterns, and wondering why nothing changes. But the truth is, change begins with recognition, and recognition only comes through reflection. When you make reflection a daily habit, even just for a few minutes each evening, you begin to notice things that were previously invisible to you. You start to recognize how your thoughts influence your mood. You begin to see how your energy shifts throughout the day. You can spot where you lost your focus, where you got distracted, or where you were truly engaged and productive. This awareness gives you an incredible advantage. It gives you data, real feedback from your own life that you can use to make better choices. Daily reflection turns experience into insight. Life teaches us lessons every day, but only if we're willing to learn. A conversation that went poorly, a goal that was neglected, a moment where you felt confident. All of these are teachers. Without reflection, you miss the lesson. You let the experience pass through you without extracting its value. But with reflection, you take that raw experience and convert it into knowledge. You realize why the conversation went badly. It was your tone, or your timing, or your lack of listening. You see why you skipped that goal. You were afraid of failure, or you didn't plan ahead. You understand why you felt confident. It was preparation, posture, or mindset. These small insights accumulate and begin to shape your behavior going forward. This is how growth becomes intentional. Growth doesn't happen automatically. Just because time passes doesn't mean you're getting better. You can live the same year 70 times and call it a life, or you can live 1 year of real, focused, intentional growth and be transformed. The difference is reflection. When you reflect, you give purpose to your progress. You decide what to carry forward and what to leave behind. You stop dragging yesterday's confusion into tomorrow's opportunities. Daily reflection also builds self-discipline. It holds you accountable to your own values. It's easy to say you want to be productive, but when you reflect at night and realize you wasted hours scrolling through distractions, that awareness confronts you. It stings a little, and that's a good thing. That sting is a signal. It tells you something needs to change. Over time, as you keep reflecting, you'll begin to adjust your behavior. Not because someone forced you, but because you've trained yourself to pay attention. You become the kind of person who keeps promises to yourself. There's a quiet confidence that comes from self-awareness. When you know who you are, where you're going, and why you're doing what you do, you become less reactive to the world. You stop needing external validation because you're already grounded internally. Reflection strengthens your inner voice. It teaches you to trust your own judgment. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present and honest. You don't have to solve every problem overnight, but you do need to face it. In the process of reflection, you also uncover what truly matters to you. In the busyness of life, it's easy to lose sight of your priorities. Days blur together, responsibilities pile up, you chase tasks instead of goals. But when you pause to reflect, you remember what's important. You remember your family, your health, your vision, your character. You realign your actions with your values. You stop living reactively and start living deliberately. That kind of alignment is rare, but it's powerful. People often underestimate how quickly they can grow when they become intentional. We tend to think transformation takes years, but the truth is, one day of clear reflection can spark a decision that changes everything. It can break a pattern that's held you back for years. It can help you see an opportunity that was right in front of you all along. It can give you the courage to act, the wisdom to wait, or the humility to seek help. Reflection is not a passive activity. It's not just sitting quietly and thinking. It's an active process of reviewing, analyzing, learning, and correcting. It requires honesty, it demands self-respect, and it rewards you with clarity and strength. The more you reflect, the more self-aware you become. The more self-aware you are, the more power you have to change your life. That's not motivation, that's mechanics. That's how real growth works. Without awareness, you're a passenger in your own life. You go wherever the road leads, but with awareness, you take the wheel. You become the driver. You can choose your direction, adjust your speed, and decide which exits to take. Daily reflection is the act of checking the map. It's how you avoid getting lost. It's how you recognize if you're going in circles. And it's how you know when it's time to shift gears. Reflection isn't reserved for monks or philosophers. It's a practical tool for everyday people. You don't need a journal full of profound thoughts. You just need the courage to ask yourself the right questions. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short? What will I do differently tomorrow? These simple questions unlock powerful answers. They put the spotlight on your habits, your choices, and your mindset. They expose excuses and highlight effort. They take the abstract idea of growth and make it real. Your future is shaped by small daily decisions, not big events. This truth is often overlooked in a world that glamorizes milestones and dramatic turning points. People tend to believe that success, transformation, or breakthrough moments arrive through sudden opportunities, big promotions, chance encounters, or one-time risks. But real change doesn't usually come from the grand and the spectacular. It comes quietly, subtly, through the daily choices you make. Those seemingly insignificant moments where you decide to act with discipline instead of comfort, purpose instead of passivity. Every day you make dozens, if not hundreds, of small decisions. Whether to hit the snooze button or get up with energy, whether to eat something healthy or something easy, whether to start your work with intention or waste the first hour scrolling, whether to express gratitude or complain, whether to practice your skill or put it off for another day. Each of these choices may seem minor in isolation, but over time they accumulate. They build on each other, they become patterns, and those patterns shape your character, your habits, your results, and ultimately, your life. It's easy to overlook the power of a small decision because we're conditioned to look for dramatic effects. We want fast results, instant gratification, or visible transformation. But most meaningful outcomes don't come from what you do once. They come from what you do consistently. A single workout won't change your body, but 100 will. One honest conversation won't fix a broken relationship, but repeated openness can rebuild trust. A single day of focus won't change your productivity, but developing a rhythm of focus will. This idea can be both humbling and empowering. Humbling because it forces you to take responsibility. You realize your future isn't waiting out there in some distant, uncontrollable event. It's being formed by what you're doing today, right now. Empowering because you don't need to wait for a special moment to begin. You don't need anyone's permission. You can start shaping your future today with the small, deliberate decisions that are fully within your control. You might not be able to change your circumstances overnight, but you can always change your direction, and direction is far more important than speed. If you're headed the wrong way, speeding up just takes you further off course. But a small adjustment in direction, even 1 degree, when applied daily, leads to a completely different destination. That adjustment often comes in the form of small decisions. Choosing to read 10 pages a day. Choosing to listen instead of interrupt. Choosing to reflect instead of react. Choosing to invest instead of spend. Each choice is a steering wheel that gradually turns the trajectory of your life. People often underestimate the power of small changes because they don't produce immediate results. There's a delay between action and outcome. You might eat clean for a week and see no visible difference. You might write every day for a month and not get published. You might budget carefully and not see your savings grow right away. This delay is where most people give up. But those who persist, who understand that compound interest applies not only to money, but also to habits, knowledge, skills, and relationships, those are the ones who reap massive rewards later. They understand that today's small, wise decision might not pay off today, but it's building something tomorrow. These daily decisions also serve as a mirror. They reflect what you value. If you consistently choose rest over responsibility, you value comfort more than progress. If you choose distraction over discipline, you value escape more than achievement. This isn't about judgment, it's about awareness. The decisions you make daily are expressions of your priorities. They reveal the truth about what you really want, not what you say you want. Saying you want to get healthy while choosing junk food every day shows a disconnect between intention and action. Saying you want to be successful while watching hours of television every night shows a misalignment between desire and discipline. When you become conscious of your small decisions, you gain the ability to change your values from the inside out. You can start shifting your priorities, not just with words, but with behavior. You can align your actions with your goals. You can live with integrity, not just moral integrity, but alignment between what you aim for and what you do. That kind of integrity builds confidence. Every time you choose the better decision, even when it's hard, you reinforce belief in yourself. You prove to yourself that you are capable of change, that your goals are not just wishes, but priorities. This mindset also protects you from discouragement. When you're only looking at big events, you're constantly chasing peaks. You're constantly feeling like you're not doing enough because you haven't hit a milestone yet. But when you shift your focus to the daily decisions, you start to feel a sense of progress every day. You realize you're not stuck. You're building. You're not lost. You're learning. You're not failing. You're forming the foundation of your future. The people who succeed at the highest levels rarely do so because of one big event. It's not the one audition, the one meeting, the one launch. It's the hundreds of days spent preparing when no one was watching. It's the relentless consistency of doing the small things right. Writing when they didn't feel inspired. Practicing when no one clapped. Choosing the hard way when shortcuts were available. These aren't just habits. They are decisions, small, daily, intentional decisions that compound into excellence. It's not glamorous, it's not always exciting, but it's always effective. The person who builds the future they want is the one who learns to win the day, every day, not because the day is perfect, not because they always feel motivated, but because they've trained themselves to make the right decision, especially when it's inconvenient. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, especially when you don't feel like it. And discipline isn't built in a moment, it's built in many small moments. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you add another brick to the foundation of the life you're building. Even setbacks and failures become powerful when viewed through the lens of daily decision making. If you fail today, but reflect and decide to learn from it, that's a win. If you make a poor choice, but wake up the next day determined to make a better one, that's progress. Life isn't about being perfect, it's about being committed. It's about choosing the next right thing again and again until the results show up. When you embrace this principle, you stop chasing miracles and start mastering the mundane. You realize that greatness is not some distant mountaintop, It's built into the rhythm of your day, the way you start your morning, the way you speak to others, the way you respond to difficulty, the way you manage your time, the way you take care of your body, mind, and purpose. All of it counts, all of it shapes your future, and all of it is within your control, one small decision at a time. Most people fail because they never pause to learn from their day. They move from one task to the next, one problem to another, one week into the next, without ever stopping to consider what actually happened. They don't ask themselves what they did well, what went wrong, or what could be done differently. Without that pause, life becomes a blur. Just activity without awareness, motion without meaning, repetition without refinement. And when you don't reflect, you don't grow, you repeat. You recycle the same thoughts, the same behaviors, and the same mistakes over and over again. Failure is not the problem. Everyone fails. The problem is failing without learning. That's what traps people in mediocrity. When someone makes a mistake and never examines it, they are doomed to make it again. And again, until it becomes a pattern. That's how habits are formed. Not just good ones, but bad ones too. Without awareness, you can accidentally build a habit of self-sabotage. You can create a pattern of neglect, avoidance, or procrastination and not even realize it. The same mistake repeated enough times becomes your normal, but a mistake examined becomes a lesson, and a lesson remembered becomes wisdom. That wisdom is what breaks the cycle. There is a kind of humility required to stop and learn from your day. It means admitting that you don't have it all figured out. It means being willing to face your own behavior without excuses or denial, and that can be uncomfortable. But that discomfort is productive. It's the friction that creates transformation. When you avoid reflection, you avoid the truth, you avoid the discomfort, and in doing so, you also avoid the opportunity to improve. The people who grow, who succeed, who rise above the rest, they are not perfect. But they are brutally honest with themselves. They confront their days, they confront their results. They extract the truth and use it to their advantage. Each day is a lesson waiting to be studied, but most people are too distracted to notice. They are busy rushing to the next thing, numbing themselves with entertainment, or escaping into noise. They mistake motion for progress. They check off tasks without asking if those tasks mattered. They respond to messages without questioning if those messages were important. They work long hours but don't stop to evaluate if their energy was directed effectively. It's not that they lack effort, it's that their effort lacks awareness, and without awareness, effort becomes wasted energy. The best performers in any field operate differently. They review. They study their day the way an athlete studies game tape. They look for errors in judgment, lapses in discipline, and areas for improvement. Not to shame themselves, but to sharpen themselves. Growth isn't about guilt, it's about precision. It's about noticing what worked and what didn't, and adjusting with intention. That's how champions are built. Not in moments of glory, but in quiet moments of reflection. When you fail to learn from your day, you also miss the opportunity to reinforce what went well. It's not just about catching mistakes. It's about capturing victories, however small. Maybe you handled a difficult conversation with grace. Maybe you resisted a temptation. Maybe you followed through on a commitment. Those are wins. But if you don't reflect, you'll overlook them. And what you overlook, you can't reinforce. Progress needs to be noticed in order to be repeated. Success leaves clues, but only for those who are paying attention. There's also an emotional benefit to learning from your day. It builds self-respect. When you take the time to look back, you're telling yourself that your life matters enough to be studied. You're saying, I value what I do. I care about who I am becoming. That mindset strengthens your identity. It builds integrity. Over time, it builds a quiet confidence. You no longer need external validation to feel like you're growing. You've got the evidence in your own reflection. Learning from your day also gives you clarity. Without it, your thoughts stay tangled. Problems seem bigger than they are, Emotions linger without resolution, but when you sit down and reflect, even for 10 minutes, things become clearer. You start to see patterns. You start to understand cause and effect. You notice that when you start your morning rushed, your whole day feels reactive. You realize that when you eat poorly, your energy drops. You see that when you take time to plan, you make better decisions. These insights are gold, but they are hidden beneath the surface of a busy life. Reflection is the act of mining those insights. Most people say they want to grow. They say they want to be better, but they don't build in time to review what they're doing. And without review, you cannot improve, you can guess, you can hope, you can try harder, but real improvement comes from feedback. And the most consistent source of feedback is your own life. Your actions are talking to you every day. They're telling you what works and what doesn't. But if you're not listening, you'll miss the message. There is a danger in constantly moving forward without pause. You begin to mistake momentum for meaning. Just because something is keeping you busy doesn't mean it's moving you closer to your goals. Just because you're tired at the end of the day doesn't mean you were productive. And just because a day was full doesn't mean it was fulfilling. These are the kinds of realizations that only come through reflection, and they are crucial. Without them, you wake up months later wondering why you're not where you thought you'd be. You wonder why the results don't match the effort. And the answer is almost always found in the days you didn't stop to learn. People who never reflect tend to repeat the same year over and call it experience. But those who reflect grow in wisdom, maturity, and effectiveness. They evolve, they adapt, they get sharper, more focused, more aligned. They move from random action to strategic intention. They don't just live, they build. They don't just exist, they craft their life with purpose. Learning from your day is not something that requires hours. It's not some complex system. It can start with a few questions at the end of your night. What did I do today that moved me closer to my goals? What distracted me? What challenged me? How did I respond to those challenges? What would I do differently tomorrow? These are not deep philosophical questions. They are practical, powerful questions that generate awareness. And that awareness becomes your advantage. Even the smallest insights can create massive change. Realizing that your tone was off in a conversation helps you fix it the next time. Noticing that you're most creative in the morning helps you rearrange your schedule. Catching a recurring negative thought helps you replace it with something empowering. These aren't dramatic shifts, but over time they create a dramatically better life. Not because you tried harder, but because you paid attention. Not because you had more time, but because you used your time wisely. Not because you never failed, but because you always learned. Reflection turns mistakes into lessons and experiences into wisdom. Most people experience failure, frustration, embarrassment, and setbacks at some point in their life, but not everyone grows from them. The difference lies in whether they take the time to extract meaning from those experiences or simply move past them in search of the next moment. Life is constantly giving feedback, but it's only useful to those who pause to listen. Reflection is the tool that converts pain into purpose, confusion into clarity, and struggle into strategy. Without it, you're left to repeat the same errors and misunderstand the same signals over and over. Mistakes in themselves are not the problem. They're a natural part of life, growth, and ambition. The issue arises when people experience a mistake and internalize it as failure instead of data. When you reflect on a mistake, you allow yourself the chance to look at it objectively. You detach emotion from the event and examine it for what it really was, a choice, an action, a moment in time with a result. That result is not a label of your worth. It's a reflection of what you knew at that point, what you did, and what you can learn to do better. This practice is essential because without it, mistakes become shameful, burdensome, or defining. But when you reflect, mistakes become useful. There is something powerful about taking a mistake and breaking it down piece by piece. What led to that decision? What influenced your behavior? What could have gone differently if you had paused, thought more clearly, or acted with more awareness? These aren't questions of blame. They are questions of responsibility. Reflection gives you the ability to take ownership without beating yourself up. It shifts the perspective from "I failed" to "that was a failed attempt, and now I understand why." That understanding is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Experiences, even painful ones, are neutral until you assign them meaning. Reflection allows you to assign constructive meaning. For example, a lost opportunity can become the fuel that drives preparation for the next one. A difficult relationship can become the lesson that teaches boundaries and self-respect. A financial setback can teach strategy, discipline, and the importance of long-term thinking. None of that wisdom is automatic. It only emerges when you take time to think through the experience with honesty, curiosity, and the intent to learn. When people avoid reflection, they often carry the weight of unresolved experiences. They repeat mistakes because they never understood them in the first place. They build defense mechanisms and habits that protect them from discomfort rather than helping them grow through it. But reflection offers a different approach. It provides healing through understanding. When you truly learn the lesson, you don't need to keep reliving the pain. You take what's useful, let go of what's not, and move forward better equipped for the future. There's also a compounding effect to reflection. One lesson well learned can prevent dozens of future mistakes. One clear insight can save years of wasted time. A single moment of awareness gained through reflection can redirect your choices, your relationships, and your career path. This is why some people seem wise beyond their years, not because they've lived longer, but because they've extracted more meaning from the life they've lived. They've reflected, absorbed, and applied their insights, turning everyday moments into building blocks for wisdom. Reflection is not about reliving the past in a loop of regret. It's about examining it with the intent to grow. It's about finding patterns in your decisions, emotional triggers, habits, and results. Maybe you notice that stress leads you to avoid important conversations. Maybe you realize that you always lose focus at a certain time of day. Maybe you discover that your best decisions come when you give yourself 5 extra minutes to think before speaking. These small pieces of knowledge add up. They don't come from reading a book or attending a seminar. They come from being a student of your own life. Everyone says they want to be wiser, stronger, and more capable. But few are willing to do the uncomfortable work of reflection. It's not always fun to look at your own behavior with honesty. It's easier to blame others, to point to circumstances, to move on without looking back. But that avoidance has a cost. It robs you of the insight you could have gained. It delays your progress and keeps you repeating cycles that no longer serve you. The people who move forward fastest are often not the ones with the best opportunities, but the ones with the most awareness. And awareness is cultivated through consistent reflection. The process of turning experience into wisdom also makes you more compassionate, both toward yourself and others. When you understand your own mistakes deeply, you stop expecting perfection from other people. You recognize the human tendency to falter, to overlook, to misunderstand. This creates patience, empathy, and a greater ability to lead, influence, and support others. You don't judge as quickly because you've seen your own blind spots. You don't condemn others for stumbling because you've been there too. This emotional intelligence is one of the most valuable outcomes of reflection. It softens your reactions while strengthening your character. It also makes your decision-making sharper. When you reflect on past decisions, you develop a mental database of what works and what doesn't. You start to recognize warning signs. You learn to trust your intuition because it's been informed by real thought. You develop a kind of internal compass that helps you navigate complexity with more confidence. You don't panic when challenges arise because you've trained yourself to extract value from difficulty. You've developed a mindset that looks for the lesson instead of just reacting to the pressure. Reflection also helps you recognize progress that might otherwise go unnoticed. We live in a fast-paced world that glorifies constant achievement. But growth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's in the fact that you responded more calmly than last time, that you kept a promise to yourself, that you said no to something that would have derailed you. These are wins, but you only see them when you pause long enough to acknowledge them. That acknowledgement is fuel. It reminds you that you're not stuck, you're not failing, you're evolving, and that belief in progress creates momentum. The more you reflect, the more skilled you become at understanding yourself. You begin to spot patterns in your thoughts, behaviors, and emotional cycles. You notice the things that trigger anxiety, the routines that lead to productivity, the environments that inspire creativity. You start to understand how you operate best. That kind of self-awareness is a superpower. It allows you to stop guessing and start designing your life around what actually works for you. When you develop the habit of reflection, you no longer see life as something that happens to you. You see it as something that happens for you, as a classroom, a teacher, a feedback system that's always available to help you grow. You begin to appreciate your past, not because it was perfect, but because it was valuable. Every mistake becomes a message, every experience becomes a tool, every day becomes a lesson, and in that mindset, you stop fearing failure, you start using it, you stop avoiding discomfort, you start leaning into it. Because you know that on the other side of reflection, there is always growth, and on the other side of growth, there is always a stronger version of you being shaped by the choices you make today. The habit of reflection leads to clarity, focus, and purpose. In a world that moves fast, where distractions are constant and attention is a currency, most people live without true direction. They wake up and dive into their day without anchoring themselves in what matters. They respond to messages, demands, noise, and urgency without asking whether any of it aligns with who they want to become or where they want to go. Life becomes a blur of activity without alignment, and that's where the chaos begins. But when you build the habit of daily reflection, you interrupt that pattern. You create a quiet space in your day where you turn down the noise and listen to yourself. You look within, not around, for direction. That act of looking within is what unlocks clarity. Clarity is not just about knowing what you want. It's about understanding why you want it, how it connects to your values, and what steps you need to take next. It's the difference between running fast and running in the right direction. So many people are busy, but they're not effective. They work hard, but they're not fulfilled. That's what happens when your effort isn't connected to a deeper purpose. Reflection helps you reconnect. It allows you to step back and ask critical questions. Is what I'm doing aligned with what I value? Are my actions today contributing to the future I want to build? What should I keep doing, and what needs to change? These questions clear the mental fog. They force you to look beyond the surface of your day and see the patterns that are forming. When you reflect consistently, you start to notice how certain choices lead to certain outcomes. You realize that when you begin your day with intention, you perform better, that when you plan ahead, your stress decreases, that when you avoid certain habits, your energy increases. This kind of self-awareness sharpens your decision-making. It allows you to use your time and energy with precision instead of scattering it across distractions. Clarity also brings confidence. When you're clear about who you are and what you want, you stop second-guessing every move. You don't chase every trend or mimic what others are doing. You don't compare your path with someone else's highlight reel. Instead, you move with a quiet certainty, a grounded sense of self that doesn't need external approval. That kind of confidence doesn't come from hype or motivation. It comes from honest reflection. It comes from spending time with your own thoughts and getting familiar with your own values. It's a deep knowing that's developed over time, one day at a time, through the habit of reflection. Focus is another byproduct of reflection. In today's world, attention is fragmented. We're pulled in multiple directions by devices, deadlines, and digital noise. Focus is rare, and that's what makes it powerful. Reflection helps you regain that power. It reminds you of what matters so that you stop giving your energy to what doesn't. When you reflect at the end of each day, you start to see which activities moved you forward and which ones drained you. You start to realize how much time you waste on things that are urgent but not important. This awareness is the first step toward focus. You cannot improve what you don't see. Reflection allows you to see clearly. Once you start identifying your distractions, you can begin to eliminate them. You can create boundaries, routines, and habits that protect your focus. You can design your days to support deep work rather than shallow busyness. And the more you practice this, the more you reclaim your attention. You train your mind to concentrate, to be present, and to resist the urge to jump from one thing to the next. Focus is not a natural trait. It's a trained skill. And it's trained through repeated awareness, through noticing when you've drifted and gently bringing yourself back. That awareness grows through reflection. Purpose is the third gift that reflection offers. It's what gives life depth. It's the sense that what you're doing matters, not just to others, but to you. So many people move through life checking boxes, doing what's expected, and following the crowd. They feel empty not because they're incapable, but because they're disconnected from their why. Reflection bridges that gap. It brings the why back into the conversation. It helps you remember why you started, why you care, why you want to grow. That emotional connection to purpose fuels resilience. It keeps you going when progress feels slow, when obstacles arise, when motivation fades. Purpose isn't always grand or world-changing. It can be as simple as being a better parent, building something meaningful, growing into the person you respect. But regardless of its form, purpose creates meaning, and meaning is what keeps people grounded in hard times. When you reflect daily, you stay connected to that meaning. You keep your purpose fresh in your mind and close to your heart. You stop drifting and start designing. You start aligning your actions with your principles. That kind of alignment is powerful. It creates integrity where your words, beliefs, and behaviors all point in the same direction. Reflection also helps you navigate seasons of change. Life is not static. Your goals, roles, responsibilities, and dreams evolve over time. If you don't stop to reflect, you may find yourself stuck in an old version of yourself, living by outdated standards, pursuing goals that no longer inspire you. But with consistent reflection, you stay updated, you check in with yourself, you adapt, you pivot with intention instead of waiting for life to force a change. You become proactive in your growth rather than reactive to your circumstances. There's a discipline to reflection. It requires effort to sit in silence, to be honest with yourself, to face both your progress and your shortcomings. But that discipline yields freedom. When you know yourself, you stop being driven by fear or impulse. You don't need to chase everything because you know what's essential. You don't need to impress others because you're at peace with your direction. That kind of freedom is rare, and it comes from doing the inner work that most people avoid. It's easy to live distracted. It's easy to avoid self-examination, but ease is not the goal, growth is, and growth comes from awareness. It comes from the quiet moments where you slow down enough to listen to your own life. Reflection brings your mind into the present, your focus onto what matters, and your heart back into alignment with your highest values. It creates clarity when the world is confusing. It sharpens focus when your attention is scattered. It reconnects you to your purpose when you've gone through the motions for too long. When you reflect consistently, even for just a few minutes each day, you build a deeper connection to your journey. You start noticing your own patterns, celebrating your small wins, and correcting your missteps before they become habits. You develop a mental sharpness, an emotional steadiness, and a spiritual groundedness that can't be shaken by external noise. You become a person of depth, not just productivity. You begin to live with clarity, act with focus, and move with purpose. All of this comes from the habit of reflection practiced daily, not once in a while when life gets out of control, but as a lifestyle that creates stability, insight, and intention. You can change your mindset and direction in just one night. Most people believe change is a slow, painful, drawn-out process that takes years of grinding effort, but the reality is that transformation often begins with a single moment of clarity, a moment where you've had enough of drifting, delaying, doubting. A moment when you choose to see things differently, to think differently, to respond differently. That moment doesn't require weeks of preparation or months of motivation. It only requires one choice. One night where you decide to reflect honestly, accept fully, and commit completely to a new direction. The power of a single decision made with full awareness and intention can be greater than years of indecision and regret. It's not that all the work will be done in one night. It's that the decision to start can be made instantly. That decision shifts your mindset. It rewires your outlook. It moves you from passive living to active creation. The night you make that decision becomes a turning point, a reference moment you'll look back on when things get hard, when old habits try to pull you back, when doubt creeps in again. Because you'll remember that moment where everything changed, not because the world shifted, but because you did. Mindset isn't something you're born with. It's shaped, molded, and built, and it can be rebuilt at any time. The strongest mindsets are not forged in comfort. They're built in moments of honesty, when you face your patterns, your excuses, your cycles, and choose to break them, and that choice can happen overnight. The mind is powerful, but it follows the instructions you give it. If you keep telling yourself it's too late, too hard, too far, your mind will find ways to support that belief. But if you tell yourself the truth, that change is possible, that discipline is a choice, that your future is still being written, then your mind starts looking for ways to support that belief instead. A new direction starts with a new perspective. Maybe you've been seeing failure as a sign to quit. One night of reflection can help you see it as a signal to adjust. Maybe you've been seeing discomfort as a threat. One quiet evening of thought can show you it's actually your training ground. Maybe you've been avoiding hard conversations or hard choices, but one honest look inward can reveal that avoiding pain is costing you more than facing it. These shifts in thinking don't require 10 years of therapy or 1,000 books. They require honesty and attention, and both can be given in a single night. When people hear the phrase change overnight, they often dismiss it as unrealistic. But that's because they're measuring change only by results. They look for external proof, a new job, a new body, a new life. But real change begins on the inside. It begins with a renewed mind. That internal shift doesn't take months. It can happen right now. When you realize your life is a reflection of your mindset, you stop trying to change circumstances first and start by changing your thoughts. One night of silence and stillness can bring clarity that no amount of busyness ever will. Your direction in life is determined by your decisions, and your decisions are influenced by your mindset. If your thinking is reactive, you'll make choices based on emotion, impulse, or habit. But if your mindset is intentional, reflective, and purpose-driven, your choices become tools for growth. They move you forward with clarity, and the beauty is, your mindset is not fixed. You are not a prisoner of the way you've always thought. You are not chained to your past reactions or patterns. You can look in the mirror tonight and say, this ends here, this changes now, and that declaration can become the beginning of a new path. One of the most powerful things about the human mind is its ability to reset. Just like a computer that's been overwhelmed with too many tabs, apps, and background programs, your mind sometimes just needs to be shut down, cleared out, and rebooted. That reboot doesn't happen during chaos. It happens in quiet, It happens in solitude, and it happens when you step away from the noise of daily life and tune into your own thoughts. You don't need a retreat or a vacation to do this. You need one night, one notebook, and the willingness to be honest. Ask yourself the questions you've been avoiding. What's not working? What am I afraid of? What would happen if I finally committed? Let the answers come without resistance. That level of mental clarity shifts your energy. When your mindset changes, you walk differently, talk differently, and make decisions from a place of power instead of pressure. You stop reacting to life and start directing it. Your emotions stabilize because you're no longer living at the mercy of circumstances. You've taken back control. That sense of control doesn't come from changing the world around you. It comes from changing how you interpret, respond, and choose within it. That power is yours, and it can be accessed at any moment, starting tonight. There is a kind of momentum that builds when you decide to change. It starts small, but it grows quickly. The decision you make tonight leads to a new habit tomorrow. That habit, repeated, becomes a system. That system becomes a lifestyle, but none of it happens without that first shift in mindset. Too many people wait for motivation to strike, but motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. But decision is different. It doesn't rely on feelings. It's rooted in clarity, and clarity is what you create through reflection. One of the most overlooked parts of growth is the role that identity plays in behavior. If you believe you're lazy, undisciplined, or incapable, your behavior will match that identity. But identity can shift in a single moment. You don't need permission to see yourself differently. One night of reflection can help you let go of the old identity that has kept you stuck. You can decide that you are no longer someone who quits, no longer someone who makes excuses, no longer someone who puts off their own potential, and from that identity shift, new behaviors follow naturally. When you shift your mindset, you also shift your vision. You begin to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You begin to believe in progress where you once saw only pain. Your perception of what's possible expands. That expansion of vision leads to a redirection of energy. You stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You stop chasing distractions. You start investing in yourself, in your craft, in your future. One night of deep, uninterrupted thought can draw a clear line between the life you've been tolerating and the life you're ready to create. Changing your direction doesn't require knowing every step. It requires knowing the next step, and that next step becomes clear in silence, not noise. When you give yourself time to process, you'll often discover that the answer you've been looking for has been inside you the entire time. It just needed space to emerge. That space is created through reflection, through stepping away from the crowd and returning to your own truth. It's in that truth that you find not only clarity, but courage. The courage to begin again, the courage to change directions, the courage to walk a new path, even if you've walked the wrong one for years. Everything you need to shift your direction begins with a single night of honest reflection. Not dramatic change, not external approval, not perfect conditions. Just one night where you choose to think deeper, ask more, and commit fully to what comes next. That night can be the start of something remarkable. It's not the finish line, it's the spark that lights a fire, and the fire that lights the way forward. Consistency in reflection compounds into transformation over time. Most people misunderstand the power of reflection because they only try it once or twice, expecting instant clarity or magical results. But the truth is, reflection is not a one-time event. It is a habit, a discipline, a repeated act of checking in with your own life. And like any other worthwhile discipline, it's the consistency, not the occasional intensity, that leads to real change. When you reflect daily or even weekly, you begin to see patterns. You recognize the thoughts you keep thinking, the actions you keep repeating, and the emotions that keep returning. This awareness isn't dramatic at first, it's subtle, but subtle doesn't mean small. It means foundational. It means you're building something sturdy. Transformation begins with awareness, and awareness comes from paying attention. Most people live their lives reacting, not observing. They move through their days without questioning why they do what they do, say what they say, feel what they feel. But when you pause to reflect, you shine a light on the internal mechanisms that drive your external life. You stop being a puppet pulled by unseen strings and become the puppeteer, guiding your actions with intent. That awareness sharpens over time. Each time you sit down to reflect, you get better at catching your own blind spots, quicker at spotting excuses, and stronger at holding yourself accountable. It's like working a mental muscle. The more you practice, the sharper and more honest you become. Consistent reflection gives you a record of your journey. When you journal, meditate, or even talk aloud to yourself at the end of a day, you capture thoughts that would otherwise disappear. These reflections form a roadmap, one that reveals how far you've come, how often you've stumbled, and where you tend to get stuck. And just like any good map, it helps you plan a better route. Over time, you begin to notice which environments bring out your best, which habits drain your energy, and which beliefs no longer serve you. That kind of insight doesn't arrive in one lightning bolt moment. It builds slowly from consistent observation. The real magic of transformation lies in the compound effect. Think of it like planting a seed. You don't see results the day you plant it, but each day you water it, tend to it, give it sunlight, something is happening beneath the surface. The roots are spreading, the structure is forming, and eventually, one day, a sprout appears. That sprout didn't come from just today's effort. It came from every small act of care that happened consistently over time. Reflection works the same way. It may feel slow, it may feel boring, but it is changing you quietly, steadily, permanently. When you make reflection a habit, your decisions improve. You no longer act from impulse alone. You remember what happened the last time you reacted in anger or fear. You recall the lessons from past wins and losses. That kind of memory, that personal wisdom, is what separates growth from stagnation. People who don't reflect repeat. People who do reflect evolve. Over time, your reflection becomes your internal compass. It guides your choices, shapes your standards, and filters out the noise. You stop being pulled in 100 directions and start moving with purpose. And that purpose, once discovered, deepens the impact of every single action you take. There's something profoundly grounding about returning to your own thoughts regularly. In a world full of distraction and noise, reflection is an anchor. It brings you back to your core values, it reminds you of your goals, it realigns you with what actually matters. And when that realignment happens consistently, you stop drifting. You stop wasting time. You stop living someone else's life. Instead, you begin living intentionally. Every week you reflect, you're editing the script of your life, trimming away what doesn't belong, adding in what does, and rewriting the parts that need improvement. That editing process is what leads to a better story. Reflection also humbles you. It shows you where you were wrong, where you overreacted, where you played small or let fear win, and that honesty is a gift. Without it, pride and ego can grow unchecked. But with it, you stay grounded. You remain a student of life, always learning, always improving. That kind of humility is rare and it's powerful. It builds character. It makes you a better friend, partner, leader, and human. But again, it doesn't come from one intense night of journaling. It comes from the discipline of checking in with yourself regularly, of being honest even when it's uncomfortable. Another benefit of consistent reflection is emotional mastery. Most people are at the mercy of their moods, tossed around by stress, fear, or anxiety. But reflection gives you perspective. It creates space between you and your emotions. Instead of being overwhelmed, you can observe. Instead of reacting blindly, you can respond wisely. Over time, you learn what triggers you, what calms you, what uplifts you. You develop emotional intelligence, which is one of the most powerful tools for success in any area of life. And like all intelligence, it grows through attention and repetition. Consistency also builds trust with yourself. Every time you sit down to reflect, you're telling yourself, my growth matters, my thoughts are worth listening to, my life deserves attention. That builds self-respect. And self-respect leads to better boundaries, better habits, and better choices. When you trust yourself, you no longer need validation from others. You don't chase approval because you're already aligned internally. That alignment is priceless, and it grows every time you show up for yourself through reflection. The process of reflection isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it reveals painful truths. Sometimes it shows you how much time you've wasted or how often you've betrayed your own values. But even that discomfort is productive. It wakes you up, it challenges you to do better, and over time that challenge becomes motivation, not from guilt but from responsibility. You realize that you are the author of your life, and reflection is how you write, edit, and improve the story. And just like a writer becomes better with every page, you become better with every moment of honest review. The people who make the greatest progress in life are not always the smartest, richest, or most talented. They are often the ones who pay the most attention, who think deeply, who notice small things, who learn from each day, and that kind of attentiveness is not natural. It is practiced. It is built through the regular, consistent act of slowing down and asking, what did I learn today? What can I do better tomorrow? That discipline becomes a superpower. It separates you from the crowd. It builds wisdom that can't be bought or faked, and it equips you to lead, to inspire, and to grow in ways most people never will. Consistency in reflection is also what protects you from repeating cycles. Everyone has patterns of behavior, of thinking, of avoiding. If you don't reflect, you repeat. But if you reflect consistently, you interrupt, you catch yourself, you intervene, you shift course before the damage grows. And the more often you do that, the more power you gain over your own habits. You stop being a slave to your defaults and start becoming the designer of your life. That design doesn't happen in chaos. It happens in quiet, in solitude,